are listening to Earful, a Disney podcast. I'm your host, Jenna, joined by my husband, Noah. And in this podcast, we are going to be discussing our opinions on all things Disney World, Disneyland, Disney Resort, and giving you the updates that you need because there's a lot of changes happening in the parks. Some of you may know us from Instagram as Earning Your Mickey Ears. If you are coming from there, welcome. We are so happy to have you. If you are new, well, so are we because this is our first podcast. Just to give you guys a brief overview of who we are and why we think we have the ability to have a podcast about Disney. It's really just that we love the parks just as much as everybody else that's listening to this podcast. We grew up going to the parks and we just stay up to date and go way, way too much. Just like all of you. Noah, over your, let's say, 30-something years, how many times would you say that you've been to the parks?
Way more since I've married you.
Accurate.
Where I've gone maybe twice before we were married over my life to twice a year since then.
So I've basically brought a lot of joy and you are blessed to be married to me is what I'm hearing.
Exactly. How many times would you say you've been?
Probably over 35 times. And I'm just going to preface that with I do not live in Florida and was not annual pass holders growing up. So, yeah, lots of time and money definitely spent at the parks growing up. And I've obviously passed that addiction on to you.
And you would say this is like a family nostalgia thing too, right? The whole family loves Disney.
Definitely. I think it's a place where I grew up going to the parks and my parents grew up taking us, and it's just kind of always been our place. As I'm sure our listeners, it's the same for them. It's just the place that you grew up that never changes and you go back and it's home.
Seeing that it's our first Disney podcast, let's do a little icebreaker. So, favorite park, favorite ride, favorite Walt Disney World snack, and then favorite Walt Disney movie.
Okay, so favorite park for me is Magic Kingdom, hands down, no competition. Favorite ride for me is just going to be Splash Mountain because it's my favorite. Favorite snack is going to be a Mickey bar. Yeah, those are good. And then favorite Disney movie, that's so tough. Right now, I'm feeling like it's Up.
Up.
What about you?
Favorite park is definitely Animal Kingdom.
I knew it.
Because not only does it have all those wonderful animals, it also has my favorite ride, which is Dinosaur. Because it has my three favorite things. It's a dark ride, it has animatronics, and it moves really fast. Snack would be candied apple. To be specific, a candied apple covered in peanuts. And then favorite movie, probably Up as well.
Two peas in a pod.
Yep.
It's like we're married. Okay, moving on to our first topic, which is going to be the Skyliner. I know that obviously this isn't new news. We've known about this for a long time, but as it's kind of getting towards it opening finally, there's a lot of things that have been happening. So do you think, I guess the first thing, do you think that it's a good thing, the Skyliners?
I think that, well, we probably have to discuss why, right? Why are they putting up these gondolas all of a sudden when they already have the buses and the monorails and all that? They're obviously a little bit worried about Star Wars Land.
That's an understatement.
So, I think they expect massive crowds coming in. And the gondolas are a way to not overwhelm the buses and the other transportation. Will it work? It's hard to tell.
Right, and I guess you have to look at the pros and cons of the Skyliner. So, I mean, a pro to it is it's a fun way for people to get around. But that also would kind of, I guess, feed into a con is I would ride it just to ride it. You know, it wouldn't necessarily, I think their point is people staying at the resorts that it goes to. Hopefully people will book those resorts so that they have access to the gondolas. It wouldn't necessarily make me want to stay at the resort.
And if they don't have air conditioning, definitely not staying at that resort in the summertime.
Definitely not. I was a little bit surprised that they decided to not go with air conditioning, being that it's Florida. I mean, we kind of have a rule that we don't necessarily put in stone, but we tend to avoid going to the Disney parks between like June to end of August because it's just too crowded and it's too hot. But that's another podcast for another time. Now, not putting AC into these gondolas, can you imagine in July being in basically a box, even if the windows can open on these things?
Well, maybe being inside them and moving really fast, the wind rushes your face and you get a nice breeze going in, maybe?
Devil's advocate.
I don't know.
I see.
Well, I would hope that Disney prepared somewhat and they understand where Disney World is built and the temperatures and the weather and all of that they have something in place to keep people from, melting inside a moving box before they got to Epcot.
True. I'm sure that they did. But it's hard to imagine now, sitting here talking about it, that
yes,
no aircon makes sense.
When it says no air conditioner, it's like, it's a big red flag, I guess.
Yeah. And I think another thing with the Skyliner that caught me by surprise was, in my head, and this might have just been me being dumb, was that they were going to be really big because they're supposed to bring an easier way of transport to Star Wars Land, which is going to be so packed and so huge. So they're going to be able to transport 20 people at a time. Well, that's not the case. They can transport about 6 people max, I think, or 4 people.
I thought it was 8.
Oh, maybe it's 8. Okay, we'll say between 4 and 8, depending on the sizes of the people and the kids and all of those things. So, I mean, when we were there a week or 2 ago, whenever that was, they do have a lot running. They were testing them. They have a lot running at once. They move pretty good speed, which is really nice to see. And it's not like your typical, skiing gondola where it's like going really slow and one goes and it takes a long time for the next one to go. Like, they do move pretty quickly, like a lot on the line at once. I don't know. What do you think about the sizing of them?
I think they look fine. Think about little Jenna, right? Go back in time to little Jenna with pigtails. Maybe you're 7 years old. You got your plastic goofy hat on, and you're in line for the gondolas. These gondolas. Would you find them magical?
Totally would.
Yes.
That would be like, when I was a kid and you'd get to the airport, the Florida airport, and we'd always say the first ride was the what's it called?
It's a monorail.
The monorail at the airport that takes you to the main terminal from the terminal you're in. And that was always the first ride for us for the Disney trip. So I think that this is going to be great for kids. No question.
Yeah. So it might be a little bit of an eyesore for other people, but I don't know.
Meaning adults who see less magic than kids.
They see the non-painted beams going through, but maybe they'll
burn to me.
Maybe they'll paint those. Right?
Yeah.
And the graphics on the actual gondolas could be cool.
Yeah. Those are cool.
I'm a little annoyed that the Guardians of Galaxy one is cartoon versions of Star-Lord and Gamora. I feel like they should have been Chris Pratt and Zoe Saldana. Would have looked a little cooler.
Yeah, like why make cartoon ones? Because they're not cartoon movies.
It looks a little like Universal's Marvel Land type of graphics. No offense, Universal, but it looks a little cheap, on the cheap side. But
right.
I mean, that's a small con, I guess. But I got,
Another thing that we absolutely have to talk about this week is these bans that Disney announced that will go into effect May 1st. For us, they don't really affect us at this point in our lives, but eventually, they would affect us. And they're definitely going to affect a huge number of people that go to these parks. The first being that Disney is going to be smoke-free. That's huge.
Yeah. Well, maybe you should talk a little bit about the designated smoke areas that you find often in the parks. they're no longer going to be there. So
Yes.
where are a few?
One of them I know was over on the right by that wishing well where we got engaged.
Yes.
At Magic Kingdom. That was actually a smoking area.
So that's, if you're facing Cinderella Castle, you go up on the right side path of it, and halfway up there is a little wishing well, which was a smoking area.
Mm-hmm.
And as of May 1st, 2019, it will not be.
It will no longer be. So I know, and that also includes vaping as well. Now, I'm not a smoker, so my viewpoint on this is going to be quite different from someone who does smoke.
Yeah, and being a non-smoker guest at Disney, I've never really seen... I mean, the only one I feel like I've seen is the Cinderella Castle one, but it's never bothered me. Like, you pass by it, and it's never been a problem.
Yeah.
I think they're getting rid of them for more space, and maybe just because they want to promote smoke-free lifestyles.
Yeah.
But I read that in order to smoke, you'll just have to go outside of the park, like the entrance areas
Which
will have.
is such a hassle.
Yeah,
You're there with your kids, and you have to go all the way outside.
I mean, it depends on where you are in the park. If you're in Africa in Animal Kingdom, and you want to smoke, that's a very long walk.
Right. I think Disney's reasoning for this is that it's a park for kids, and they're really becoming aware of secondhand smoke that kids are, I guess, being exposed to at the parks. But I'm kind of with you. I was never bothered by the smoking. I never felt like it was really in my face. Even vaping, I don't recall one time that someone blew like vape smoke. I get more vape smoke in my face at the mall walking around than I ever did at Disney. I don't ever remember that. So them kind of putting this ban in, it's going to be hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. So I guess we understand why they're banning it, but as a non-smoker, we don't think there'll be an effect on anyone. Like, if you're a non-smoker, you're not going to see much of a difference, I feel like, for the ban. Like, it won't impact you.
No, but the people who are smokers, they're going to be really kind of put out.
Obviously.
And that ban actually, just to kind of discuss the ban in its context a little bit more, that also applies to Disney Springs. That will also be completely smoke-free.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure the water parks, too, but I think the water parks might have always been.
Yeah, I don't know.
I also kind of wonder if Disney was sick of picking up the buds. Also,
it could be it.
They've not said that, of course.
They don't have magical cats to pick up cigarettes like they have to hunt mice.
Yeah, it's true. So that's something that's really going to be an adjustment for a lot of people, and I think there's a lot of controversy kind of surrounding it right now, and it's kind of looked at as, them having smoke areas was accommodating guests who smoke, and then taking away those smoke areas isn't really accommodating guests who smoke in a way. Of course, there's understanding as to why they're doing it, but...
Yeah. Well, moving on to the next ban. This is something that... I'm sorry to all the big families out there, but this is something that I think will positively affect the parks, is the ban on the wide strollers.
I'm so excited about this.
Yeah, we apologize to all the parents.
We're so sorry, because we aren't parents yet, and we know that like those wide strollers are lifesavers. But speaking as two people who are not having those strollers, we get run over by those things constantly.
Yeah, they become like blockades during the parades or fireworks, and it's like a wall that you can't get through.
Yeah, when you're trying to keep up with your party and someone just, comes barreling through with like this giant stroller. And not that everyone's like this with their strollers, but we've come across a few people that nearly took our lives to get past us because they had the strollers. And I know it's also hard with those strollers maneuvering through the stores. I think that was a concern of Disney's, was you there's no way for you to get through like the big store on Main Street with a double wide stroller. And I think something else that was becoming increasingly popular were wagons. And this ban also applies to wagons. Wagons will no longer be allowed at the parks. But don't worry, if you do rent strollers from like a third party rental place in Florida, all of them are going to be very, very quickly accommodating and making sure their strollers and stuff are in compliance with Disney's new rules. So, keep using those, because they'll be making sure that they're definitely in compliance.
families are their number one target audience. They're gonna do their best to keep them happy.
Yeah.
I wonder if the giant Cinderella pumpkin carriage
I love seeing those.
is still allowed.
I hope so.
I don't know.
If you ever got those, you are just the best because
best parent of
all
year
time. We always love seeing those at the park. We're like, that kid is having a great day.
I wish they had like a pirate ship version for like boys.
Should we start a business?
I mean, I would have, as a kid, I would have loved a pumpkin carriage either way, but.
Well, you did love Cinderella
as a kid. I did love Cinderella. Gus, he was awesome. He's my favorite.
I also think that they put, the main reasoning for changing this stroller sizing was also for Star Wars Land. Yeah. I think that's really where the conversation started because, we'll get into Star Wars Land maybe in this podcast, maybe at a later date in more detail, but that park, that land is going to be packed. It's going to be like wall-to-wall people for a really long time, and having a double wide stroller in there there's just no way that you can have the capacity of people it's going to have also trying to maneuver around really big objects.
Yeah.
With droids also running around.
Yeah. And we don't know how wide the streets are or the paths or anything like that. And stroller parking as well. We just don't know.
Yeah. It's definitely going to be a change, and I mean, I guess there's going to be a lot of parents now investing in those double strollers that are in the front instead of wide.
Sorry if you recently bought a wide stroller to take to your Disney
trip.
know,
though, that a lot of the like jogger double strollers, they are still in compliance with the sizing. I read that the jogger doubles are still fine and stuff. I guess there's just specific ones that are really big. And wagons.
Yeah, those wagons.
Those wagons. All right, the next and final ban, it seems a little bit odd, but it actually makes a lot of sense, and I'm surprised they didn't do this sooner, and that is the loose and dry ice ban.
I don't know who's bringing dry ice to the park, but...
I don't know either, but really what it means is now you have to, if you're bringing a cooler with your drinks and your lunches, totally fine to keep doing that, but you need to pack it with ice packs. This is going to make it easier for security to check your cooler as you go through, which makes the line go quicker for everybody. And it does make sense. Like, I guess when people are checking the coolers, rummaging through a bunch of individual pieces of ice, like, to get through things that are buried under it, that is kind of tedious. Yeah, I don't know how much it'll speed up the line, but... Yeah.
You don't want to make their fingers cold, too. They're doing a good job.
They're doing their Disney best.
You gotta be accommodating for them.
Yeah. So I think, just keep that in mind. If you're going to the parks after May 1st and you're bringing your lunches, totally fine to keep doing that, but pack it with those, either an ice pack or a reusable ice pack.
And can we give our number one tip at a Disney World park?
Go for it.
You can go to any restaurant, any shop that sells food.
Quick service, anything,
and ask them for a cup of ice water.
Yes.
And they will give it to you.
Yes.
For free.
For free. That is, if you want a tip for the day, that is our number one tip we can always give you is go into a quick service restaurant and say, can I have a cup of water? And they will always give you an ice water. You don't have to be buying the Dasani bottles of water for $4 all day long. And Save your money.
It tastes wonderful.
It's Disney water.
It's Disney water.
It's perfect.
It's absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure if you asked for just ice, you could get just ice.
True.
You could get your loose ice fix.
Yeah. Also, now that the Disney parks have Starbucks as well, I'm sure know that you can go to Starbucks and ask for a venti water, and they'll give it to you there as well. Yeah. So.
Another topic that's come up this week is the replacement of the Hollywood Studios parking lot sign names. And I don't know if any of you are familiar. I'm sure most of you are. If you parked at any of the Walt Disney parks, each of the parking lots are named after a character or just a thing that's themed with the park. So, for example, Animal Kingdom has Rafiki. It has Dinosaur. Mm-hmm. It has the Unicorn.
I think so. And the dragon that that was going to be a land. Yeah. It isn't a land.
So if you park in like the Goofy lot at Magic Kingdom, you know that you were parked in the Goofy lot. Well, this week they announced that the Hollywood Studios sign names are changing.
Dun dun dun.
And the old ones, which were film, television, stage, sound.
Basically, the MGM studios that all of us, 80s and 90s kids grew up with and totally love. That is not really the MGM.
I kind of want to talk to you about that. Was how does it feel for an era of your childhood that's changing?
Gotta hit me right in the heart, don't ya?
Yes.
Stab me right there.
Yes.
It's sad. MGM that I grew up with was a great park. It was my favorite, and it's gone.
There's remnants.
There's
here
remnants.
there.
You go in and it looks like the same park for the most part, but great movie rides gone. That was so sad.
Yes, Jenna and her dad got the Great Movie Ride shirts.
We did.
Which they still wear to Hollywood studios out of protest.
We do. And, we're going to be incredibly judgmental when that Mickey and Minnie roller coaster ride opens up.
I'm sure it'll be great, but it'll be hard to replace that hole in our heart that is the Great Movie Ride.
It was MGM as what it was a park that I wanted my kids to experience what I experienced growing up.
You wanted to see the alien one of the aliens not functioning.
Exactly. I wanted to see the Lollipop Guild terrify my children. And all of that. And, I wanted to watch them go on Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, which of course I understand why they've replaced these things. I know that Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is not exactly the most popular film anymore. But, the backlot tour we saw for years getting made smaller and smaller and smaller. And it wasn't, this great thing that it once was. I think it started out at like 2 hours originally. And by the time the backlot tour closed, it was like 30 minutes and it was not great. So I understand the new adjustments, but, it's not the park that it was. Right now it doesn't really have many rides. I guess with Toy Story Land now being open, it's offered a little bit more. But, you guys would probably say, why are parking lot names? Like, why are we talking about that?
Yeah, it's kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a ripple of a larger effect that happened. So
it's the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, it's
for the MGM that was, in a way.
Yeah, it's
the final step.
They're getting rid of all the old remnants, and it's kind of one of the last things that they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it's a sad thing because a lot of people loved MGM Studios, and they're sad to see it go. And Jenna is a big one of them. And just the sign names, which is so trivial, is just it means more because what it's replacing and the history and all the memories that were there before, what it's replacing.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's also that the new parking lot names aren't necessarily special to that park unless they know something that we don't.
Well,
because
I'm going to list the names to you. You got Mickey and Minnie, Woody, Jessie, Buzz, Olaf, and BB-8. So
they do make sense, except for Olaf.
Yeah, Olaf is kind of weird unless they plan on opening a Frozen Land. You think that they put that at Epcot.
Right.
It is kind of
weird.
Like,
that's the only one that I'm like, why do we have an Olaf? Unless they're going to put in like a live action Olaf play or ride.
You heard it here first.
We're breaking the news.
Frozen live show rumored to be opening at Hollywood Studios.
So it is something that doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you really kind of look at what it actually means for MGM, it means that the park that was when it first opened is really no longer the park that's there. It's not MGM Studios, it's Hollywood Studios, and that name may not be staying if we're going to really get into it. There's been rumors for a year that Disney is trying to look at different names for the park now.
Yeah, and we can always talk about that on another podcast. Let's do something. Let's have a moment of silence for MGM Studios, the Great Movie Ride, and the old parking lot signs.
Okay. So another thing that we can talk about today is going to be Rafiki's Planet Watch. Now, this was at Animal Kingdom from the day that it opened. I'm pretty sure, like, Rafiki's Planet Watch opened with the park. I honestly only ever went to that once. And I only went once because you had to take, like, this little train to get to it. And then you got there and it was kind of, like, severely underwhelming. it was like, why am I here? Okay, put me back on the train. I want to get back to the rest of the park and go on more rides.
You weren't really watching the planet.
No, you weren't. I think it was meant to be like educational. I remember like you could see some animals maybe being worked on by a vet, I think. But it wasn't something that we ever felt like we always had to go to. In fact, we never went back again. So when it closed last year, it wasn't like a big surprise to me. I was more surprised that it didn't close sooner. But the news that came out was that they are going to be reopening Rafiki's Planet Watch. I don't know. Do you think that's worth it?
Well, out of the many times that I've been with you and your family to Disney World and to Animal Kingdom, I've always asked what Rafiki Planet Watch is. And they just go, don't worry about it. And then we pass it. We pass the sign. And
we just keep walking.
We leave it in the dust.
We do.
So I still don't. I've never been there. And yeah, I can't comment because you guys won't let me go see it.
We'll let you go see it. We were just trying to save you from being severely bored.
That could be true.
Yeah. I think for them...
That reminds me of the Universal Studios... what's that ride in the Midas ride? What was that ride? The one where you walk through the temple, and it's really
where
in Islands of Adventure, the ride where you walk, where the outside of it, this huge
Poseidon's Fury.
Yeah, Poseidon's Fury, where it's this wonderful queue line where you're walking into this giant mouth, and going with her family to Universal Studios.
He always asked to go on Poseidon's Fury.
It was just so cool. It was like being in Indiana Jones. I was like, what's in there? I have to see it. I have to see it.
Guys, we warned him. We were like, you don't have to see it.
Yes.
It's awful.
Her dad would be like, nope, nope, nope. Every time we went, nope.
And then finally you wore him down.
Finally, I broke him. And we went inside, and it was so disappointing. It was like watching like an old Power Rangers episode
from like 1992.
Yeah, where like the actors are like on strings shooting sparks at each other, and there's a really poor projection of a man's face on the wall.
Some weird water effects.
Yeah, that's the only cool part when you walk through the big water tunnel. Mm-hmm. It's a shame. Why? I don't know why that's still there.
Right. So that's kind of how we feel also about Rafiki's Planet Watch. Yeah, so for it to be worth it, I think it would have to be completely redone. Offer, people, I don't even know, like make it something that kids are really going to want to be really going to like beg their parents to take them on that train to go to that island every single time they go to the park, which would mean if I was a kid, that would mean like interacting with some animals. I'm not talking about like a cow and some goats. I mean like animals you don't normally get to interact with at a zoo. Yeah. And then
have them walking around with like a cockatoo on their arm.
Yeah.
Or you could make it, or like a snake that they can pet.
Exactly. You could make it, you could still have the educational piece, but like have some cool technology to go with that educational piece, and like, have them doing things on like these really cool, I don't know what it's going to really take to make it worth reopening. I'm shocked that they're reopening it. I'm going to guess they didn't know what else to do with the space, because you do have to take a train to get there. So what can you do with it? So I guess we'll just have to see.
I think it'd be cool if they turned it into a play park for kids, but I guess they already have the Dinoland one.
Mm-hmm. So we'll just have to see.
So in short, would you say, well, I guess you wouldn't know what it's going to look like. We don't even know if they've actually changed anything, right?
Yeah, they could have just painted
refurbished it,
Yeah, we won't know until
as
August.
It stands now, would you recommend it to parents?
No.
Okay. And what would your alternative be? To wait to go on Kilimanjaro Safari?
Yeah, go on Kilimanjaro. Literally anything else in the park. Animal Kingdom has so much for kids, and I don't think it's known for that. And it's got like Dinoland USA is all for kids. You can spend hours in there. Yeah. The safari is going to be like something your kids will never experience anywhere else.
It's wonderful.
It's so great, and it's different every time you go on it.
It truly is. They say that, but they really mean it. It's different every time.
Yeah, so do that. Don't go on Rafiki's. And of course, I think the last thing that we'll talk about today is something that was sort of a favorite, but then also heavily hated the whole time that it was there.
Yeah, it's not necessarily new news, but the Lilo and Stitch ride closed.
And it closed like pretty quietly. There was no like real.
It's like shamefully.
Yeah, like Great Movie Ride closed, and it was announced, and everyone was so sad, and T-shirts were made, and
they clapped. They gave them applause.
Yeah.
Like the cast members that came out after the last ride. It was like huge crowds outside of it applauding them. Lilo and Stitch was like,
it just kind of
disappeared.
Yeah, it just disappeared and became a place for strollers to be parked, or for you to walk into the main entrance of the queue and meet Stitch. And for a long time, that's what it was only a seasonal ride. So when the park was really, really busy, they would open Lilo and Stitch, the ride. But other than that, it was just a place to meet Stitch for the last like 2 years. And then this past year, they officially closed it. And if you look at the sign now, it says Lilo and Stitch meet and greet. It doesn't even say that it's a ride anymore.
And maybe you should give a quick blurb of what the ride was. What was the ride?
The ride was essentially a kid version of Alien Encounter, which had been there previously.
Yes, but start after Alien. We can get to Alien Encounter in a bit, but start after Alien Encounter. When you walked through the doors, what did you expect? What happened?
You walked through the doors and you were taken to a stage, like a pre-show, and it was the same guy that was there from Alien Encounter. It was the same pre-show essentially, where you watched one alien get turned into a bad alien, and then you went into where the main ride was, and you were all sitting in a circle. Restraints would lower onto your shoulders, and you'd be looking at like this giant cylinder that would eventually fill with Stitch, and he would break out of it, and he would jump on your shoulders, he'd breathe on you, he'd burp, and it would smell like hot dogs.
Yeah, so you were in this big circular room, and the seats didn't move. They were all circled around this big cylinder. The seats didn't move, but the restraints that came down on your arms, those were the only things that moved. They would bounce up and down when Stitch was jumping on you and things like that. It wasn't a fan favorite, I would say. There was probably the best thing about the Lilo and Stitch ride was that you could go in there and listen to the children cry.
Screaming their heads off for the terror.
It was in complete pitch black, and all you felt was Stitch climbing all over you and breathing on you, and it was terrifying.
Yeah.
And the kids, probably the only other scarier ride is the Bugs Life ride, but
it's not scary.
It's pretty scary. You get stung in the butt in that ride. But yeah, that was probably the most enjoyment you got out of the Stitch ride, so it's not a surprise that they closed it.
Yeah.
But maybe you should talk about what it was before, because I wasn't around for that time, but you were one of the few people that experienced Alien Encounter.
Alien Encounter was something that was for adults, really. It was a ride that an adult could go on with their kid if their kid was brave enough, because everything else in Magic Kingdom at that time was made for kids. So really what Alien Encounter was the same ride as Stitch, really was, but just scarier. It was a really terrifying looking alien, instead of it being Stitch, and he would walk on you like Stitch did. He would breathe on you. It never smelled like hot dogs.
It smelled like death.
Yeah, and it was the same thing, but it was a scarier alien, and he would breathe, and it would be hot. I remember that. He would breathe on you. It was hot
on the back of your neck.
Yeah,
right?
And it only lasted a few years. It was, again, a ride that people were outraged at, couldn't believe it was at Magic Kingdom. But it was a cult favorite for me and my family. We loved going on it. It took me a long time to go on it for the first time because I was terrified. But then it was like, we have to go on it. Whereas Stitch never really got that cult favorite. I think it was more for the Stitch ride was, how can you take something so happy that so many people love and make it so terrifying and so hated.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising that they closed it. I wish that they would announce what they're doing with the space, because it's a big showroom.
It's like a full-on ride.
Yeah, it's a huge
There's so
showroom.
much space. And you can actually watch Alien Encounter online on YouTube.
Yeah, there's a really good YouTube channel I love. I'll link it in our description. It's called Yesterworld. He does really cool stuff, and he talks about the whole history of Alien Encounter, and has some footage of it, and it goes into Stitch as well, and it's so good.
And when we say it's a scary ride, it's legitimately scary.
Yeah, because it's like the alien breaks out and it's like strobe lights and then it goes pitch black.
It does not fit into Magic Kingdom whatsoever. No. Like, it belongs in Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios.
Definitely.
And so now that it's closed and they haven't really announced what they're going to do with it, what do you think they should do with it?
I would love for there to be a Stitch ride. I think Stitch fits in Tomorrowland. I think it makes sense. It's something for kids. But I would, we're getting Tron, which is going to be really exciting.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. I'm so excited for Tron.
And that's a ride for adults. So it wouldn't be a terrible thing to put a more junior ride, like a junior Stitch ride in there. I don't know necessarily what that would look like. But I definitely think that they should keep it Stitch. Just completely gut the show. Gut the ride, start from absolute bare bones, let's just officially lay to rest the Alien Counter Stitch ride of the past and just, thank you for your time and we are moving on to a new ride. I think they've got a lot on their plate now and this is the best they can do with what they have now because there's just so many changes to the park. Mm-hmm. So I don't know when we're going to see something. I hope it's not something that sits how it is for the next 5 years as just a meet and greet. Because I know that the Stitch in that video that we watched, the Stitch is already decayed. Yeah. Which is a pretty terrifying sight in itself. So yeah, I don't know what they're going to do with it.
I would like to see it be turned into a themed restaurant because there's
a
big circular space that you could set up tables, and then at the center of it all is your centerpiece, which would be Stitch in the cylinder glass, and he could greet guests.
So keeping the ride essentially.
Basically the same thing, and you could even have serving hot dogs on the menu. I just think they need I would like another themed restaurant in Tomorrowland. The one that we have is.
Which one is it? I don't think they have one.
Well, it's kind of themed. Well, the Cosmic Rays, what's his name?
Oh, yeah.
The guy playing the alien
Rays.
playing the piano. It's all right.
Quick service.
But it'd be cool to have another. Yeah, it's a quick service. It'd be cool to have an actual sit-down themed restaurant. Mm-hmm. And you could even have it as an alien theme. It'd be cool to bring back the old Alien Encounter monster and put that in the center. I just don't think they have enough themed restaurants in Tomorrowland. They don't have any, do they?
No. I don't know if Cosmic Rays is a fan fave because of Ray, but it's quick service. It's not a really they could definitely do a happy medium between really nice and quick service in that spot as well.
And there's plenty of space in there to do that.
Yeah. They could definitely do something like that. I don't know. I hope it's not I hope we're not waiting 5 years for it to be something different. But
now, if you could close one ride at any of the parks.
Oh my gosh, I would friggin' close that stupid speedway go-kart next to.
Oh yeah, the bane of Jenna and her father's existence.
Guys, this. Okay, I know that what is it? The go-karting next to Space Mountain. You all know what I'm talking about.
Noises that you hear.
This is a huge thing with kids, right? Parents take their kids on it. It's always busy because it's something that kids can ride. It is just so dumb because you actually can't get around anybody because your go-kart is technically in the middle of a track. You're literally you have two wheels on the right and then a track and then two wheels on the left. So if you have someone really slow in front of you, you're stuck behind them and you're not going around them because you're both on the same track. I don't know what else to call it. I know that go-karts are always on tracks, but you have something in the middle of your go-kart that keeps you in the spot so that kids of all ages can essentially drive these things. This thing has been there since the opening of the park. It's severely outdated. It is closed right now because...
Smells like gasoline.
Yeah, it makes Tomorrowland smell like gasoline. It's closed right now because of the building of Tron. It's actually cut the track in half while they build it. So I'm kind of hoping that we've actually already had the closure of this and that they're just not announcing it.
You think it'll be a shameful closing like Lilo and the Stitch ride?
Yeah, I think they'd rather just be a quiet closing. But that's just my opinion. I actually would love to know if people hate it as much as I do. If you have kids, I understand why you like it because it's something that they can get on and the wait's not usually too crazy. But is it even fun when you're on it with your kid because you can't get around someone and it's not like a true go-kart. And I think we're just, I think Disney, with the level of Disney that it is right now, it's moved past go-kart rides. Like,
yeah, they could put something there that's better, guys.
like the Finding Nemo ride at Disneyland. Put that there.
Which one's the Finding Nemo ride?
The one that used to be Captain Nemo that they turned into the submarine
yeah, that's
ride.
Right.
You could put that there. That's enough
that'd be
space.
cool. That'd be cool.
That'd be far better.
It's just go-karts on a track. It's not really
within a track.
Yeah, it's not that great.
No. What would you get rid of?
Now, I don't know if I'd close it, but I would extremely renovate it, like completely gut it. And this might offend a lot of people, yourself included.
I know what you're gonna say.
Pirates of the
I
Caribbean.
knew it. I knew
Pirates of the Caribbean is one of those rides where I just don't get it. And if you've watched the new Shanghai Pirates of the Caribbean ride,
he is so jealous of Shanghai Disney's Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, we watched the ride.
It's awesome.
We watched it on YouTube, and he was like, "Are you freaking kidding me that they get that and we get what we get?" Like, there's and like honestly, guys, go YouTube it right now. Shanghai Disney Pirates of the Caribbean. Watch it, and you will understand. Like, there's no comparison. I mean, we have the nostalgia of like what we have is Walt's original design, and that's great.
But that's actually in Disneyland, though. The original.
Yeah, but it's the same thing.
Well, you can keep the original in Disneyland.
True.
And then just completely put the one from Shanghai in Magic Kingdom, and I promise you will have like 6-hour waits. It is fantastic. And they've already fiddled with Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disney World enough where I feel like it's not that recognizable to what it used to be.
Because they put Johnny Depp in.
Yeah.
And then took out those mermaid skeletons.
They're always changing it.
They're always changing
So
it.
why not just change it to its full, wonderful, glorious potential of awesome 3D screens and
the Johnny
great
Depp that
effects.
changes.
Yeah, there's a Johnny Depp skeleton. He's a skeleton that changes into Johnny Depp before your eyes, and
it's not a screen.
It's amazing.
We rewatched that like 40 times to try and figure out how they did that effect. Honestly, guys, go to YouTube, look up Shanghai Disney Pirates of the Caribbean, and then re-listen to this part of the podcast and tell us your comments on this. Because
tell me if I'm wrong, because I know there's a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean lovers, but
the redhead's already gone.
Yeah, they've got. Well, she's there. She has a gun now.
Yeah.
We want the redhead. I forgot what she says now. We want the rum. The rum.
Yeah, he says something like that, and she talks about auctioning off the other lady, even though she's a lady. I don't know. We're not getting into that. Yeah, interesting. I agree with that, though.
Yeah, you do. You agree with me.
Well, I mean, it's hard for me to go to Shanghai Disney, so I would love to see it. They have the space to do it. It didn't look like it was any bigger of a showroom than what we have at Disney World. So I think it could be really cool. Or even just pieces of Shanghai Disney Pirates of the Caribbean put into this one.
Yeah, updated a bit.
Yeah, that could be really cool. Well, I guess that's it for this week.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
And we'll be back, next week with a new podcast talking about all things Disney, any news that's come up during the week, tips that we've got for if you're going. Every podcast is always going to be different and always have a different focus. As always, if you follow me on Instagram, or if you don't, you can find us at Earning Your Mickey Ears. That will be linked in the description. Follow along with us when we're not having a new podcast. We'll always be posting there, and join in on our conversations on Instagram.
Yeah. And if you have anything you want to talk about, let us know. Yeah,
feel free to email us or send us a DM on Instagram, and we'll get into it.
And if you completely agree with me about Pirates of the Caribbean Shanghai, let me know.
Please pump up his ego. All right, we will talk to you guys next time.
All right, bye-bye.